Before handing the floor to the speakers here on the podium and also with us today online, I would like us to ask the moderators of the thematic sessions just to briefly, 2 minutes each, come up to the lectern and share with us the main outcomes or takeaway points from the thematic sessions that we had before. And if I could start with you, Florence Simbire-Joauco, please. So if you would like to take the floor.
Good afternoon. So our session discussed systemic racism, and we had the privilege of having panelists from the UN. We had OHCHR, we also had a member of the committee, and we also had somebody from the SAD Secretariat, and we had a national human rights institution as well as civil society. So the outcomes of the discussions were that it's very important for the engagement at the national level to reflect all these diversities in order to be able to influence the international level. And we had good discussions on a new general comment that has given definition and therefore more direction to national level actors on how to deal with racial profiling. As a result of this discussion, I think that for me, one of the main outcomes, important outcome, was the need to be more inclusive at the national level, because racism affects people at very local level. So there's the national actors that are important, but we also agreed that it was important to have additional actors more engaged, and these actors could include the bar associations, the academia, national statistical organizations, and even more critically, municipal or local governments. And so I just want to say that it was an excellent discussion. It was very diverse. We had a representative from Ireland who demonstrated the power of networking amongst NGOs to be able to leverage on national and international action. Thank you very much.
With the Geneva-based mechanisms. So over to you, Sandra.
Thank you so much. Obviously, I will not do justice to the richness, the wealth of our discussion, but also, I wasn't the moderator. I'm just stepping in for Rodrigo Primi, who is member of the Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights and had to go back to his session. Again, we had a very, very interesting discussion, and we had the privilege to have Benyam Deswit-Mesmour from the Committee on the Rights of the Child, two representatives of national human rights institutions with Michael Windfuhr from Germany and Adel Mettelsen-Mest from the Norwegian institution, and we had one representative from civil society with Leon Dulce from Calikas and People's Network for the Environment in the Philippines. And I want to do only 2 points. I think, as Felix, you alluded to, we started on very encouraging news and international developments. Right. On last Friday, as many of you know or may know, we had 2 resolutions passed at the Human Rights Council. One finally recognizing the right to a healthy environment as a human right, a universal human right, but also the creation of a new special rapporteur on climate change and human rights. And we built on this, or we started with this international development, also reflecting from the perspective of the committees, the treaty bodies, on recent cases that were taken, including the very, very recent decision of the Committee on the Rights of the Child on a case on climate change and child rights. All of this, of course, builds a lot on the role of national law, but also national actors and domestic law and case law, as is this clear. So, for instance, the right to a healthy environment is very, very largely recognized nationally and regionally. And now the international system is coming to speed with that, with this common ground. But also on the case at the CRC, for instance, there was a decision on admissibility on jurisdiction, which is a very good news. Jurisdiction was recognized, but it was dismissed on admissibility on the exhaustion of domestic remedies. And here, obviously, national actors have a very important role to play in that. So just to give these examples. And then the second and final point I want to make, which was very strong, was on building relationships, which is obviously in the nature of our discussion today between the local level actors and the international actors and levels, including through the role of national human rights institutions. Very key for that. And the first sub point is really, we had a discussion on how to reach out to more to environmental and climate change bodies. So really thinking outside of our comfort zone as human rights movement, really trying to work more with national and international environmental and climate change bodies. And the last and second and last sub-point was really a really vibrant call, I would say, for the need for the system to adapt to local needs and realities. First, because it's very difficult for people at the local level to navigate the international human rights system, but also because it's a key element for people on the ground to feel the international solidarity and also as a means for protection. And that was very clearly highlighted in the case of environmental human rights defenders that are so threatened, including in the Philippines. So I will stop there. It's really just a nutshell of our very rich discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sandra, for that update and for stepping in for Rodrigo, who, as you said, needed to go back to the session of the SES. Then we also had the thematic session 3, which focused on cities as critical actors in the national and international human rights systems. And I'd like to invite Virginia Brash-Gomez, also board member of the Geneva Human Rights Platform, to give us a short feedback from that session. So please, Virginia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Felix. First of all, I want to acknowledge and thank Antu Dong, who was my co-moderator for this session. Like Sandra said, I'm not going to try and repeat everything that was said. That would be impossible. I just want to reiterate a number of points, a few points that were made. We had representatives from Geneva, from the Republic of Korea, from Montevideo, from York, Pittsburgh, and other experts have worked on human rights issues at local level or on the connection between the local level. And here by local level, we're integrating cities, subnational authorities, regional authorities, local authorities, etc. So one of the points that came up quite strongly was the increased visibility of local authorities during the pandemic. And perhaps as important in the post-COVID building back better efforts in optimizing the lessons we've learned. So we spoke of the right to housing, but also to health, to food, generally to an adequate standard of living. But these measures also reflected the challenges in terms of integrating all these kind of slightly sometimes fragmented, haphazard measures within a human rights-based approach, ensuring consultation, participation, and accountability. We also learned of tools that were fundamental to establish a participatory approach to human rights implementation. A human rights indicators report from the city of York, which is the first human rights city in the UK, that identified the rights that people attach the greatest importance to. I'm particularly heartened by the fact that these rights for education, health, food, housing, equality, and non-discrimination. So there was a strong focus on economic, social, and cultural rights as really being of importance to people's everyday lives. So the process moved on from that initial identification of the rights. It has led to a change, to some changes in policies, and a new report will be upcoming soon. Also, we learned of from Pittsburgh the example of implementation of CEDAW at the local level. This is integrated in the national US initiative of cities for CEDAW. And I think it's quite an eye-opener for when states do not ratify human rights treaties, how at local level it can be different. And that was a good example. It led to the establishment of a Gender Equity Commission that now uses a gender lens to equality and intersectional discrimination. And we also had a call for 3C strategy: consult, compile, and clamor for human rights. Because sometimes we speak, the consultation and the compilation is much easier than the clamoring. And therefore there was a call to clamor for human rights. And this is also connected to a sandwich approach where we need pressure from the international community so that at local level, there could be a vision and resources to build local constituencies. In terms of obstacles, just 3 obstacles: lack of knowledge. We had a former special rapporteur on the right to housing, Leilani Farah, who spoke of the lack of knowledge sometimes. Cities or national authority, local authorities don't quite see where they fit. There's this jurisdictional muddle, who's responsible for what. And therefore also the call to attention that human rights need to rise up, but they also need to trickle down. Only then can the approach be balanced and effective. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Virginia. And I would like to call now on yet another member of the advisory board of the Geneva Human Rights Platform, Milon Putari, who was moderating the session on Building Back Better. How should national human rights actors address the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 and response measures on persons with disabilities? A session that was at the same time forming part of the Fundamental Rights Forum of the Fundamental Rights Agency. So over to you, Milon. Thanks very much.
Okay, hello, good afternoon, everyone. And welcome to the ambassadors and everybody here. So we were in a panel with on the rights of persons with disabilities, 3 excellent panelists. Amalia Gamio Rios, it's a member of the UN Committee on Persons with Disabilities, Elham Yousfeyan, who's from the Disability Alliance Secretariat, International Secretariat, and Uti Matsinen, who's a board member of the European Blind Union. So the main message of the panel was, conveyed by the panelists, was that disability rights are human rights. That needs to be recognized. It's a need for mainstreaming, and that there's a need to have the instruments that have been developed by the UN Committee on Persons with Disabilities, such as they have a new working group on tackling the issue of institutionalization of disabled persons, and a number of other instruments they've developed. Also, we need to recognize, we were largely looking at what's happening during the COVID period, and in the period now that we are, partly post, the critical role played by the disability movement. And I think we've seen this with other issues as well, that without the role played by civil society and other institutions, governments left to themselves would not have responded as was required. And we also discussed the opportunities that have come about because of the COVID-19 situation. One of the demands was that if governments have to take immediate steps, the first step would be to ensure that there's to eliminate inequality of the law, in the law, to ensure consultation of persons with disabilities. So consultation meaning not just asking for views, but actually involving them in the formulation of laws and policies, but also in the decision making, and include them in the post-economic recovery. So in economic recovery packages. There were a number of other issues, but it was a very, very, very rich session. And I think that the minutes from that meeting will be very useful. And everyone wanted to continue the discussion, and I'm hoping the Geneva Human Rights Platform will continue with this theme. Thank you.